Zamperla is a giant ride manufacturer today. In fact, by most estimates, they are likely the largest ride manufacturer in the world. They have accomplished this size largely by becoming the leading family ride manufacturer. However, Zamperla has made several attempts to become a dominant player in the thrill ride business. Some of these have been very successful. Other attempts have had mixed results. This is most clear in Zamperla's first attempt at thrill rides. In 1996, Zamperla unveiled two rides that would go on to become somewhat infamous thrill rides. The first was the Rotoshake, which we have covered in a separate video, and the other was the MiXer. The MiXer was designed with a portable first design, aiming itself at traveling fairs. By most reports, the ride could be transported on just two trailers. The ride can be thought of kind of like a combination of Zamperla's modern Nebula Z and an Enterprise, but with added thrill. The ride consisted of a central tower that was mounted to a lifting arm. This arm could lift up to about 45 degrees when at max height. The central tower featured two motors that could spin the tower in either direction. Attached to the tower was a pair of counterweighted arms, with one end of the arm featuring a rider car and the other end featuring a counterweight. This design allowed for vehicle flipping, with the flipping of the arm powered by electric motors inside of the central tower. Each vehicle would flip in opposite directions, remaining synchronized for the entire ride. This design allows for fast and highly controlled movements of the rider vehicles. Each rider vehicle featured 3 rows of 4 seats, leading to a fairly high capacity of 24 riders per cycle. The ride used Zamperla's early hydraulic restraint design. This used a single hydraulic solenoid inside of the seat that could lower automatically. It also featured a pair of locking pins located to each side of the restraint that secured into the seat itself. This restraint design was prone to issues that could delay operation when the pins would fail to fully engage with the seat. As these rides were aimed at fairgrounds, many came with manual controls, meaning that each ride cycle could be different. However, a typical cycle on a MiXer would consist of the ride starting with the central tower spinning and the vehicle starting to rock. As the ride progressed, this rocking would get more aggressive. The ride did not need to build up momentum to invert riders due to the counterweights, but many cycles did this anyway. Once riders started to invert, the central arm would start to lift, adding another disorienting element to the ride. You've probably noticed that I'm mostly describing this ride in past tense. This is due to the ride essentially being extinct. Despite the ride's dynamic ride experience, many consider these rides uncomfortable due to their bulky restraints and sometimes awkward maneuvers. The ride was also a bit of a mechanical headache due to its restraints and the multiple axes of movement. Accordingly, Zamperla had discontinued the ride by the early 2000s, several years before the also problematic Rotoshake. That being said, the MiXer still had its fans and several were constructed. That being said, the information about this ride is very obscure, and so many details about specific rides are very hard to come by. Based on what I've been able to find, somewhere between 5 and 7 different MiXers were produced. The prototype model would be sold to Knoebels and would open in 1996. It would operate under the name Axis for a few years at this location before closing in the early 2000s and being sold. It's not exactly clear where it went next, but it appears the ride ended up eventually going to VGP Universal Kingdom, where it may possibly still be in operation in India, though this may actually be a Frankenstein ride, made of parts from the Knoebels attraction and another traveling MiXer made later, but this is not exactly clear. Another installation was at Adventureland Park in Iowa, opening in 1997, with this installation simply being named MiXer. The ride would close in 2005 and would end up being abandoned at Pattaya Funny Park in Thailand, where it still sits today. This ride was only made in a traveling format, so installations at parks are traveling rides that are simply not moved. Mirabilandia in Brazil added a MiXer in 2006. This may have been the final MiXer to be produced, as there are no records of it being relocated that I can find. The ride seems to have closed sometime around 2018 and has since likely been scrapped or placed into permanent storage. A few models were made for traveling shows. A ride simply named MiXer was sold to a German showman sometime in the late 1990s. The ride would travel all around Europe while changing hands several times. In fact, in a 10-year time span, the ride had over 8 different owners. It ended its touring with German showman MiXer, who seemingly scrapped the ride sometime in early 2010, though it's possible that this ride actually ended up getting sold to Wonderland Bangalore in India, where it would have then operated till around 2019. Another MiXer, named Typhoon, was created for French showman Bolivar in the late 1990s. This ride traveled to shows around Europe until the mid-2000s when it was sold to Thailand, before it was then sold again to a park in Iraq, where it was reportedly destroyed by a bomb in the mid-2010s. Another MiXer appeared on the Australian traveling show scene in 2010. This ride had a different color scheme than any other models I was able to find, and it was definitely not new. It disappeared shortly after its arrival, and it's not known what happened to it or where it was originally from. The one remaining MiXer has operated as recently as 2023 at VGP Universal Kingdom in India. This ride no longer raises from the ground, making the original ride experience essentially defunct. Recent reports also state that the ride is standing but not operating, though this is not really reliable information. If this ride is still operating, it's likely the only MiXer still doing so, leaving it as the only operating legacy from Zamperla's first move into the thrill ride world. Have you been able to ride a MiXer? If so, what did you think of the ride experience? With this ride being so obscure, if you have information that I missed or if I got something wrong, please leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching this final episode of Flat Ride Friday Season 2. Regular uploads will resume next week. I hope you had a great summer, and I look forward to producing more episodes of Flat Ride Friday next year. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in 2026.